Mobile phone photography has come a long way since camera integration became a mainstream feature. Gone are the days of a flagship device sporting a lowly 2-megapixel sensor with absolutely abysmal performance. Today, even bottom-tier smartphones are sporting multiple camera configurations with no less than 12 megapixels. And if you look at the top tier, it's not uncommon for a phone to have 4 cameras, with the Galaxy S20 having a 40-megapixel selfie camera and a 108-megapixel camera on the rear. Not to mention that the research and development that goes into these smartphone cameras these days is insane. With the market having matured as much as it has, the major producers of high-end devices like Apple, Samsung, and Google are finding it much more difficult to separate their products from their competitors. It seems like the recent trend has been to focus on photo and video quality, which I'm honestly a fan of. So it's obvious that smartphone cameras have gotten much better, but have they gotten so good that it makes something like this obsolete? Probably not. But today, we're going to find out if you can even notice the difference between photos taken on a smartphone versus ones taken on a high-end consumer mirrorless camera. So the phone I'll be using today is an iPhone X. Now I know you're immediately checking the date this video is uploaded and saying, hey, whoa, that's not the latest iPhone. This isn't a fair comparison. And well, you'd be right. But this is the phone I have, and until you guys start subscribing and liking my videos, this is what's in the budget. The iPhone X has 2 cameras on the rear, a main lens and a telephoto. Both will shoot 12 megapixel images, but you're going to get an f-stop of 1.8 on the main and 2.4 on the telephoto. So while this sounds like a pretty fast aperture, keep in mind that the sensor in the iPhone X is roughly 1/3 of an inch, so pretty small compared to full-frame cameras. Speaking of full-frame cameras, that's what we have here. This is a Sony a7 version 3, which is a full-frame mirrorless camera that shoots 24 megapixel images. Full-frame sensor is roughly 1.7 inches, so that's much larger than the iPhone, which means you're going to get a lot more light and detail coming in and hitting the image sensor, so that's just going to give you better image quality overall. But does all that really translate to that much of a difference? For this first part of the test, I'm going to put up 2 images. One was taken with the iPhone and one with the A7. Now keep in mind that I'm not a professional photographer, so this test is designed to show each setup in the hands of an amateur. Let's see if you can tell which one's which. Okay, so we compared side by side. You can often pick out the ones that was taken with the Sony, especially in a low light environment. The full frame sensor on the A7 allows it to bring in so much more light, leading to less noise and sharper images when the sun goes down. However, let's give credit where credit is due. The iPhone, even if it's a generation or so old, can take some fantastic photos. When in a bright environment, some of the comparisons really require you to zoom in to tell a difference. That brings me to the second part of this test. While it may be apparent which photo was taken from which camera when compared side by side, it might be a different story when just shown a single image. In this test, I'm going to show you one picture, and you're going to decide which camera that came from. Let's go. Much harder, right? Drop a comment below saying how many you got right. No lying. To the average person, it's going to be extremely difficult to see the difference between casual photos taken from an iPhone versus ones taken by a more proper camera. Where the iPhone falls behind in raw power and hardware, it makes up for an extremely sophisticated software. Apple and companies alike have used those massive R&D budgets to ensure that the powerful processors used in their devices are optimized for producing fantastic photos. Think of Sony and iPhone as painters. Sony can look at a scene and recreate that scene nearly perfectly from memory. The iPhone, on the other hand, doesn't have as good of a memory and is going to have to rely on imagination and creativity to complete its painting. Sometimes that turns out great and much better than reality showed, but sometimes, well, not so much. Now, I'm not saying that Sony can't use some creativity in their painting, they just outsource it to Photoshop. So overall, it's obvious that the Sony is going to take better photos. But that really wasn't the point of the video, was it? The point was to determine whether they are that much better to warrant spending thousands of dollars and carrying around a full-size camera. With that said, my answer is, it depends. If you want the absolute best quality photos, access to different lenses and tools to accomplish this, and you have the funds to play with, absolutely, the Sony is well worth it. Now, I'm aware that there are hundreds of other cameras out there that are much cheaper than this, which comes in at around $1,800. But again, I don't really have those at my disposal to test. Now, for people going around snapping photos with their iPhone, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We have seen some amazing photos come out of this thing, and the convenience of always having it in your pocket is invaluable. Because any photo captured at the right moment is better than not having gotten the picture at all. But for those of you looking to get into photography as more of a hobby or maybe to make a little money on the side, definitely do some research and consider finding a DSLR or mirrorless option that fits your artistic needs and budget. So that's all we have for you today. Thank you for checking this video out, and drop a comment below on what setup you use and if you're considering maybe upgrading. I plan to do a more comprehensive guide of my camera setup, including specs, settings, lenses, and accessories that I use. So if that interests you, make sure you're subscribed so you know when that video drops. Also, don't forget to like the video, hit that bell so you're notified the next time we post something awesome. See you all in the next one.